Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
get to the bottom of this toilet issue. Yes.
So we've got to record a promo for
Well,
Tartaria and beyond.
so let me just say that we've basically just recorded a podcast
I know
without
we
even
did,
planning
didn't we?
one. The architecture was so advanced. The engineering, if they have time to sit there and build little mechanical like watches that fold out in 10,000 ways, like they definitely weren't shitting in a corner of that room.
No,
You know what I mean? Like you can't
they weren't
design
just
and
Clothes,
create.
tipping their
clothes they
toilet,
were wearing, you know.
Yeah,
tipping their chamber
it's such
pots out the
proper.
Women, you know.
window. Do you know how they're saying that they just
Mm.
used to tip the?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And they say that they used to build toilets out over the street, like build wooden ones on, and they'd just be pooing on people walking underneath them and stuff. It's just,
Yeah, yeah.
it's so.
I think
I am
the
going to
word loo
invest.
comes from that. It's a French word. The word loo comes from like mind your head or something. It was something like that when they're tipping the
Oh,
the loo out.
really?
Yeah, loo. Yeah.
I think I'm going to invest with a session with Maggie just to talk about toilets.
She facilitated me in this hypnosis, but she didn't even realize I was in hypnosis. And then she ended up asking me all these questions about the future. And I put that out for my patrons. I don't know if you saw it, Campbell. There was
I did.
so the four time. So like I
Four
saw,
trunks.
it looked like Tron. It looked like fucking
Oh,
Tron. It was black void, and this weird kind of hexagonal neon light thing. And I saw these archons slotting in. It was so hard to describe. They were slotting Trump into these different timelines, and there was four versions of him, and they were manipulating the timelines because they're time travelers, and they were kind of jumping around. And we just feel like, I feel weird. Like you feel like there's a weird feeling, but they've played around with the timelines. That's why some of us feel like things are going in a loop. Like, what the hell? It just
yeah,
feels like
man.
things are going in a loop. And so they've been playing, there's four versions of Trump. And they were saying that
Mm.
he's got this signature, like a soul signature that impacts like billions of people around the world. So that's why they manipulate where he goes in. So they have this version of him that's the good guy that won the election. Then they have that's saving the children. Then they have the bad guy that's telling everyone to get the jab. Then they have the other one who's grabbing women by the pussy. And then they got another one. So there's four versions, but they're not clones.
Makes
It's
sense.
like literally another timeline version of us.
So what
So
happens to the
that's
human being?
archons. And in
What happens to us when we're constantly reset? Like, what's the impact on us if we're in this constant loop of being reset whenever?
I don't know. I think, like, I literally, if you
Good
said to
question,
me
Maggie.
what you achieved in the last, so since 2020, it feels like 10 years to me. It does not feel
Yeah.
like.
Oh, yeah. The time is it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
You did a video. Did you do a video on this, Campbell, with Lorenzo about the time running out?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've definitely touched on it a few times. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we were talking more about how we don't look at our time as time, right? I mean, it's weird at the moment, but we never sort of hit points where like, oh, we've only got so much time left.
Mm,
Where we probably should be, especially at the moment because it's going twice as fast, right? It's
I
like, what do I want to
know.
do before
We're
it's
halfway through
up?
the year. Can you believe it's been a year since we went to Melbourne?
No,
What?
but
Look at me,
the
I'm
other
getting
thing is
younger.
it also
I'm turning
seems
27.
a
I'm not
long way
getting younger.
away. Like,
I
do you
was,
find that like it's been really fast, but when you think about Melbourne, it seems like a really long way away,
yeah,
like more than a year. But the
like you and
time that it
me,
took to get
Ca-
here is like quick. It's just
Kelly,
it's fucking ridiculous.
Kelly and Campbell, and you guys and me, we all had tragedies in like the last 12 months. It's
Yeah,
crazy. Like just straight after Tartaria, straight after that event, all this shit happened in 1 year. It was crazy. I went to England. Look, I can't believe I was overseas. I was like, what? I did all of that. And then,
it's yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, it's
man.
been crazy, man. Yeah,
It's
crazy. I mean, I think I think the topics of toilets and timelines is a great show right there. I think we should ad lib on that show. I think there's a lot to discuss on those two topics. And for some reason, I think they're mutually they're mutually together. Understand one, we'll understand the other.
And even the topic of hygiene.
Maybe.
The topic of hygiene,
Yes.
people think that everyone stunk back in the Middle Ages or whatever. And they didn't.
Yeah.
They had like linen undergarments, and that was the thing that they washed and changed. And linen, if you wear it, you'll notice you don't stink because it absorbs your sweat. You don't stink like we do these days. They would have been eating a different diet that would have been a lot cleaner than what we have now. And so that idea, and they had certain ways of making sure that things smelled nice. So if they're taking all that trouble to do that, then why would they be shitting everywhere and pissing everywhere? And
yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like seeing them like gracing the halls of these beautiful buildings and gracing the sitting rooms and the dining rooms of these beautiful spaces, and like to even like put onto the concept that they're shitting without toilets. Like it's a ridiculous concept. I actually had a big debate, like a really big argument. She really pissed me off. And because she was just saying, I've Googled it, Kelly, and look, here it is. Like the Romans, they built these holes. So, and I was like, but how did they build London or whatever without Paris, without toilets? You can't move forward as a civilization if you haven't taken care of the basic needs, food, shelter, and shit.
So
and
they
I was
do
like,
everything
because it's
so precise in Paris, and it's all on this grid, and but they just let people shit in the street.
Yeah.
I would say that
big balls. It's like, where's the toilet? And someone just hands you a shovel. Oh, okay.
I would say that they got buried. I reckon that a lot of the if they did shit, that plumbing went down to the bottom layers of these buildings, and then when they started utilizing the buildings again, they couldn't turn back on the sewage septic shit scenario and just started shitting all over it, basically.
Well, I know England, in Victoria, like Queen Victoria had the big. She was the one who really told them to replace all the plumbing and the pipes and everything throughout England. That was the big push during her reign. But were they replacing pipes? Maybe that's what they were doing. Maybe they were replacing.
Well, they taking out copper and things like this. Maybe there were. But I think that there could have been other water systems they could have been using the tap systems, but just reversing them because all the sewer was too low or whatever. And because it happened in every city, right? They all had this great stink because they just started pumping all the poo into the river, and it's like,
you know what? I have a feeling that what they actually did is they utilized the shit. They probably utilized it to make energy and. Gas and actually used it as part of the engine of the civilization. So it was very inbuilt into the very sophisticated mechanisms and engineering. It wasn't that they didn't know how to do it. It was integrated flawlessly, I would say.
Yeah, it's different because I've been looking at those toilets with the bags on them, right? And you poo in there and it turns it into gas or compost. And I thought, well, maybe that's what they were doing because it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't.
Our sewage system is basically let's just flush it all into the ocean or the nearest water. But that's literally what we still do. But we're the smartest ever, right?
Yeah.
So they've clearly. I think they had a completely different system. I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe they were in the house.
Maybe they
would
were
make
outdoor privies because they did say that a lot of the wealthy people, they were the only ones that had depending on the time period, the only ones that had indoor sort of privies. But what if the poorer people had outdoor things and it was like a communal thing? I mean, that could have been how they collected. There must have been some system.
Doesn't it feel like it makes more sense that, we've been programmed to believe that they were so dumb that even though they built these amazing feats of architecture, they were too dumb to work out how to build a toilet. Now, being someone who's built a toilet, like, it doesn't take much. I can't build the Tower of London. I can't, but I can build a toilet. So doesn't it make more sense that in actual fact it was so sophisticated and so integrated that we don't yet understand it versus they were so dumb that they couldn't work out the shit. Like it is a crazy, but like honestly, Tui was pulling up all these documents from all these toilet experts from around the world. You know, there's actually an occupation in toilet archaeology, and they were like basically convinced of this timeline where up until the 1920s, we hadn't got our head around how to deal with people pooing every day, even though every engineer and builder who worked on every single one of these great buildings like would have had to poo and shit every day and be constantly reminded that he hasn't integrated into this building the fact of where did my shit and poo go. Like none about it. Just that is the ultimate programming. The toilet situation, man, I love that it ends and begins on shit.
What about the Turkish baths and the hammams that took all that time to get clean and all of that, but they didn't look after their shit? Like that doesn't make sense.
I know.
But because we've got all these old structures, so where were they? Where were the toilets? Where were the privies? Like, why do we not have these old? They have found, Campbell, have they found in, it's not Santorini, is it Crete? Do you remember they did some digging or something and they found this underground civilization and they found plumbing there or something like that? Was it Crete? Is it Crete or is it
the Minoans or something?
Yeah, Minoans, where the Minoans were.
Yeah, one of those Minoans, I think.
I thought they had an advanced. I think
they've definitely found it.
There was like an advanced.
Yeah, they found like houses and they had like heating in them, and they said they had plumbing and stuff and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, we know the Romans had it. We know that, but this is why they needed the Dark Ages, right? To explain how we went from having all this stuff to walking around with people pooing on our heads as we walk down the street, right? Like,
well, that's all.
So they had to introduce that time. And so we just lost everything. We just forgot everything, and then so. But the dumb thing is a lot of these buildings were built before the Dark Ages. They tell us, right? But they still seem to lack all this. So I mean, I think most of the buildings we look at, like the cathedrals, now, I don't think people were frequenting them very much. I think they were machines, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
So that's maybe why they had no toilets.
Yeah.
Or they were lower level. Yeah.
And the idea of these castles being these cold and clammy places, surely there was, they did something that made it warm.
Exactly. Why would you build the ones up in the snow? Why would you build them if you couldn't heat them and stuff? I mean, and then we just get told these, they just burn lots of wood in the fireplaces. But we know that doesn't work.
No.
That's just dumb. And they were supposed to have had glass, right, for windows, yet they're all full of windows, and it's just.
Yeah. So they've either dealing with buried engineering that they didn't know how to turn back on or access, or they're dealing with sophisticated technology they did not know how to utilize when it came to sewage. Or all the stories are correct, and they built the Buckingham Palace without toilets because they didn't know how to build a toilet. It's a fascinating conversation. Like, I just find the toilet one just, if I was to summarize Tartaria in history, the toilet one is the key ingredient right now.
Mm.
Do you think
it's ironic we've got
in it?
It
could be a lot to do with the food we eat. So.
I'm exploring this idea of archons, and so the idea of how they keep resetting things, and they're, we know this already as a concept. We don't have proof of it, like scientific proof that there's these archons, but we have all these testimonies of experiences and stuff. But like, what would be the one thing you would have to remove from a civilization to make it look primitive? It would be toileting.
Yes. Oh my God, that's a fucking excellent statement. Totally.
If you had to reset a
timeline, living in shit. Yeah.
If you had to reset a timeline and eliminate technology, what's the one thing? How do you cover your paper trail? How do you cover your paper trail? If you're a person that's going to reset,
deleted the system.
Yeah. Look, think about it. How do you cover a paper trail? How do you explain away convicts suddenly arriving in Australia when there's an aqueduct not far from my house that's in the
Yes.
middle of the
Mm.
bush, right?
Yes.
Yep.
How do you explain these things? You eliminate the plumbing, or you eliminate, like if you were an archon that was a time traveler, let's say just an alien being that was in charge of this realm, and you were an advanced high, you had this technology beyond what the flesh suit humans had. What would you have to do to eliminate memory of technology so that you can start them again and reset them again? So they had to they had to learn how to build things again. You'd eliminate the technology around the toileting.
I think that's fucking brilliant. I absolutely, of course, that makes
Campbell's
sense to me.
frozen.
Yes.
Campbell's
Yes,
with
I'm
that.
back. Sorry, I just missed the last second half of what you said
No,
there,
I
Dee.
think that was fantastic.
What
What did you say?
I was saying how, let's say if you were a person if you were an archon or an alien race that was in charge of this realm, and you had to reset the beings that you were playing around with so that they could not know the technology, the advancement they'd gotten to, because obviously they want to keep setting us back, right? So it's like the way to cover up the paper trail, the basic, to make people think in the new timeline that the old race was dumb and stupid, is get rid of the technology around the toileting.
Fuck yes.
Yeah.
And like, what a
And
great
hide
clue for us
all
to
that
start
stuff.
with.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
Campbell?
Yeah, all hygiene, like basically saying they're stupid and sitting in poo, couldn't even wash them. So it's like these stories that I was looking into about, and it was all about where sayings come from, but it's in the narrative. Like they used to say, people would just have like a cooking pot, and they'd never empty it or clean it. They just keep adding to it, and they literally tell you. They say so. Sometimes they could have been eating food that was 6 months old, and so it's a whole thing, isn't it? Of these people are so stupid they can't
There's
shit,
a
they can't
whole.
eat, they can't wash themselves.
I've been watching historical food videos. So I've been really delving into history and food and how they did things and how they made things, and even just the basic mince pie. So one of the people on like that was doing a video to experiment, the old mince pies had real meat in it, right? So it had meat and fruit, not just fruit like nowadays. And the fruit was there and the spices was to preserve the meat. Okay, so if you had meat, this was a way of having the meat preserved, and they didn't have the concept of desserts. So fruit with meat was very common.
Yeah.
So they would mix that all the time, but it was a way of preserving. So she tested it. She put it in a glass jar. She put some of the mixture together, and it didn't smell off at all, right? So the meat was fine. It was preserved. It actually preserved it. So here we are thinking they're just eating rotten shit and whatever. They had ways of preserving things, even if they were very rudimentary, or they had just very like mud houses and stuff like that. They're not stupid. They knew how to preserve things.
The story is so dumb, isn't it? It's like they love to push the whole evolution, and we've been here for, whatever, right, 20 million years, and we somehow could feed ourselves and reproduce in that. But up, 1,000 years ago, we suddenly forgot everything, and we couldn't cook food anymore. We couldn't shit. We couldn't do anything.
I just remembered, where my daughter does her equine therapy, they have like a cabin where all the parents can wait for their kids, and they had books, and there was this book called Dark Emu, and it actually describes that when that the Aborigines actually had technology, they had irrigation and all of this, and it was all covered up. So they weren't actually nomadic. It was just a way of the early colonists to explain that this was terra nullius, right? And they didn't want anyone to think that they were just these stupid backwards nomads that just walked around and just found some food and whatever. No, they had actually this very complex irrigation systems and ways of catching fish. So they had these pipes and stuff running, and so they could actually get the fish going into a particular area where they would just quickly catch them for their food and what have you. And this was all covered up. Yep. So this was discovered by some of the farm owners that they would go out, and it was a really horrible story. Actually, I was just reading some of it, but they're trying to make friends with the Aborigines, and Aborigines would try and teach them and share with them and whatever. And these new farm owners, they ended up, actually, I think he was the son of, was it Charles Dickens or something? I don't know, it was the son of some famous author in England. So yeah, they ended up raping some of the Aboriginal women, and so the Aboriginal men from that tribe, because they dishonored them and whatever, tried to kill them. And so then they went out and just slaughtered all of these Aborigines and took their land and took their plumbing, like all their technology. And
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
so
That the author
I think this is what's happening, Yeah.
the author of that book, Bruce Pascoe,
Yeah, Bruce
we
Pascoe.
obviously he's Dark Emu's on one of our, we send out books to regenerative farmers, and Dark Emu's one of them. And it's really fascinating because we've actually looked at a living example, a one that we can actually tangibly see, that the Indigenous here in Australia were agricultural farmers, and that basically eradicates the notion of them being nomadic
Not
natives
caring about the land,
that weren't sophisticated in any concept, and that they deserve to be treated like animals and slaves, and
Exactly.
re-educated and taken by the Christians to be re-educated. But this body of work totally, absolutely shatters that concept of that level of sophistication. And in doing that, that book has been like so controversial and banned, and like it's now been really, Bruce Pascoe's been really dissed very hardcore for it, because it completely undermines the history of how Australia relates with their Indigenous. So it was a really profound.
When I saw the book, we were looking at it, and I said, how do you explain the Aborigines in Tasmania? Why would there be a race of Aboriginals in Tasmania if they couldn't keep themselves warm, feed themselves, have a system where they could, have fire and all of that stuff, and just have this thing in that it's like wilderness. Like, as you know, Tasmania is still like wilderness, and they eradicated all of them in Tasmania.
Yep.
There must have been a system that was there that was complex or built.
Yeah, the pictures you see, they like just got a kangaroo skin wrapped around them or something. But it's cold down there, man. It gets really cold. So yeah, exactly right. What's going on there?
I've just been to Tassie.
Yeah,
it's full. It's just crammed. The architecture of Tasmania is so Tartarian. Like, it's this classic old realm, or the whole way, even the most remote little fucking hard to get to little places. But interestingly, JC, I watched a documentary, a mainstream one about the convicts and the soldiers, and when they first arrived in Tasmania, and like they were actually saying that they had no real issues with convicts trying to escape, or soldiers defecting, because no one could feed themselves. There was literally no food available on the island Tasmania. If you left the compound, you couldn't hunt. There was no mammals, like there was nothing to eat for them. And that was interesting.
To the point where one guy, because a lot of them tried to escape and they all died and stuff, or came back. And only one guy in the whole time got away because he got picked up by some natives. I've forgotten his name, but literally he's put up as, one person actually escaped and lived.
Yeah.
But there was, exactly that
there was
bad.
A couple, there was a story of a couple of them that escaped together, and then he ended up...
Van Diemen's Land. Yeah, that's one of the movies. Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, one of them ate the other guy, ate the friend, and said he tasted like pork. That was, I think that was in Tasmania as well. So but that's, just the whole concept of primitive cultures that have no concept of, they have, be the oldest race, they would have had to have known how to do all of these things. It'd be interesting to even like with the Native Americans, the Indigenous Americans, what are their stories about their systems of living, and how did they eat and go to the toilet and all of that sort of stuff, and where did they live? Because not all of them lived in teepees. It was different, because the different tribes,
Yeah.
it's like a different country, different languages.
Yeah,
They
well,
call
there's
them,
Choco Canyon.
yeah.
Yeah. We built out Choco Canyons, built out housing, and like around Mexico and that, there was all the housing. But I was just thinking, like when they show us the Eskimos, right? That's kind of, not too dissimilar from Tasmania as far as climate, and they're just rugged up, right? But the problem is there's no furry animals, like polar bears and stuff in Tasmania, right? They're only just marsupials, so they can't. So that, yeah, man, how do they explain that? That's very interesting.
It's such an interesting topic because, like, looking at concepts of time, like burying timelines and how they managed to like delete these whole histories. Like, this story is actually a living, breathing example. Like, we're looking at, our Indigenous Australia's history has been completely deleted and sold as these, dumb natives that knew nothing and required re-education. But we know that's the absolute opposite of the truth, and yet we've lived through that deception. Like, we've seen that. Like, that was what we were educated with in our schools when we're at school, about the natives who were nomadic and didn't have agriculture, didn't have plumbing, didn't have houses, that they lived with kangaroo skins. And
here's the thing I'm going to say to you. So when do they think the last reset was? 1901?
Yeah, that's the generalist concern. Yeah.
All right. So did you know that between 1880 and 1980, there was a concerted effort across Australia and North America to eliminate the verbal history of older generations being passed down to the younger generations by having the stolen generation. So they did the same thing in Australia as they did North America. They took children from their families, from their grandparents and their families, and forced them into boarding schools, etc. That's the stolen generation, so that they did not learn their language or learn the memories and the stories of their ancestors. So wouldn't it be apt to do that before a reset, to eliminate the stories
100%.
and the memories prior to a reset, so that you don't have a generation? So that's 20 years before a reset, say, right? 21 years. So you get rid of all the kids so that they're broken off from the past and start again, right? And that's going to be 100. And they worked out that about 100 years, they pretty much could clear out. That's about 3 generations. They could clear out enough gap between, the old ways and the old memories and the old stories, and have them completely forget who they are and forget their past, forget their religions, forget all of these things.
Yeah,
Paul Wallace
100%.
is a really good guy. I want to interview him. Paul Wallace is a really good guy. He's I didn't realize he was in Australia. I just came across him a couple of days ago, and he's got a few books out, and he's like got a background. He's English, but he lives in Canberra, but he's half from Ghana. I think his father was from Ghana or something like that. And he's been studying since really, he's probably about our age, and he's been, I think he was a priest, I'm not sure, but he's been studying different religions and stuff like that all over the world, and piecing together the history of the world, and sort of explaining basically the false Eden, the concept of there being an Eden and all of that stuff. But he's the one that, he talks about all these different Indigenous tribes and what happened with the elimination of their memories and religions. And
that makes so much sense.
Well,
Where
see that.
Where my old farm was, it was near a place called Moree, which had Australia's oldest Aboriginal, what are they called? Where they force them to live there.
A reservation?
I'm going to say, it's the same meaning, reservation. Yeah. We've got our own name here in Australia. But it was up until the 50s and 60s that the Indigenous kids, if they were caught, missions, they're called missions. If they were caught speaking to their parents or their grandparents in their native language, those kids would be sent away and like never to be seen again. And if adults were caught, it was an execution level crime. Like they were sent immediately to prison. Like it was an enforceable prison sentence as soon as they were caught uttering their original language.
This is
like so it was such a specific, focused attack on breaking the lineage of the language. And I've seen that firsthand from Moree. Like it's still so recent in the history that even today, like the grown-ups now still have trauma around uttering anything of their own language. And then of course that ends the history and the song lines and you name it. And interestingly, the other day Cambell and I were on the same tangent of thought, but we were looking at native dogs. And interesting with the dingo, it's been such a massively targeted attack here. The native dog of Australian Indigenous, they're guardians and jinn detectors, demonic detectors. We were up at Uncle Lewis Walker's house the other day, and he had dingoes there, and they were the most peaceful. These dogs did not flinch or bark.
The dingo killed my baby, huh?
Yeah, good point.
When you think about the story of Lindy Chamberlain and what many people say about Marina Abramovich being there on that day doing a ritual, and that possibly Azaria was a sacrifice, wouldn't it be apt if they were demon detectors to demonize a dog. Like a dingo that is the jinn detector, the demon?
Now, in most councils, you literally can't own one. You know, if they find out, they'll come and put it down. Like the Australian native dog, we're not allowed to own it. Like, what the hell?
And interestingly, the dingo conversation, we were wondering if that expanded to other native tribes around the realm, and if they also had a native dog that was also in the same capacity as the dingo and also got targeted, because everyone in Australia knows how the dingo's been targeted. It's almost basically extinct now. Like it's very illegal to have the dingo. And to this day, I had an ex-partner and they had a beautiful dingo pet that had come in and bred with their dog. And they came home one day and the dingo had been killed and was hanging above their mailbox. I mean, like that's like, you know, a couple of years, like this is the energy and attitude that the dingo has now become in agricultural areas of Australia. Like if a farmer sees a dingo, they will shoot it and hang it up to this day. Like it's been so targeted. So
what do they think? Like, I know there's that false story that dingoes were introduced to Australia. I just don't believe that. I believe that they are native here. It's not like they got introduced in some way. Isn't there some parallels to in Indonesia? They have a similar type. Indonesia, there's a similar dog.
Thailand.
And also, this brings me to introduced animals, foxes and rabbits. What the hell are they bringing a fox on so allegedly a fox, a camel, donkey and rabbit, they're bringing it on a ship randomly.
The story about the foxes is so that they could
do hunting.
That was the same. Yeah, that was the same with the rabbit. Exactly the same. The foxes and rabbit.
You cut out Cambell. Was it so they could do the hunting?
Sorry. The fox hunting. Yeah. That was the story. Like so that 5 elite families could go and shoot foxes. They brought them here on, and they kept them alive on a ship, in a cage
for like
6 months.
6 months, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's,
I think
all the old maps, show rabbits in Australia.
Rabbits in Australia, camels, the highest population of camels in the world. Donkeys, feral donkeys. What else is there? What about the alleged the cattle that escaped, the cattle that escaped and went up to Tartaria or wherever it was up in northern New South Wales. Did you hear about that? That there's still these bison or these old cattle that originate from
And
those
yeah,
convicts.
there's
Of
deer.
course.
There's feral deer issues here in Australia.
Deer, we've got a lot of deer. Heaps.
Yep.
Mm.
So that's really interesting, actually. So
And
what
isn't
about
it
the concept?
interesting?
This brings me to the concept of what is country. Are countries just different frequencies, or are they actually landmass? Could they be different portals of frequency? And therefore, things such as cryptids can go in and out of the frequency of that realm. So each country is like a different realm. Does that make sense? So
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
total sense.
So we have eyewitness accounts of some parts of the US, I think in Utah, but I'm not sure, where there is sightings of pterodactyl to this day. And there's
Yes.
photographs, right?
Yes.
Photographs. Pterodactyl
Mm.
and many large ancient birds that are still there. There's things such
Voice of the
as
Thunderbird.
the people have seen things like is it a griffin or a phoenix? I think some people have spotted
Griffin.
those things in the middle of the desert. Deserts. I think there's a story of during the Iraq War, the American soldiers saw something that looked like a phoenix flying in the middle of the night. There's also, I mean, dogman, which looks like a werewolf, but they're often associated with the 4D and sort of shimmering in and out, and so are Sasquatch. So they're coming in and out of certain spaces that seem to be a bit creepy. And the thing is when you do spot these animals or when you come in contact with them, everything goes silent. So the physical person is saying, well, all the animals know to be quiet because it's an apex predator. But what if it's going silent because there's a time stopping and, and then that thing.
Like a portal.
Yeah, it's a portal.
Well, we have the Yowie here in Australia.
We have dogmen here too. We have dogmen here.
Every
and there's
has a slightly different one, don't they? Like it's the wild man in Asia, and he's sort of shorter with red hair, and they're bigger in America with Bigfoot now, and yet we have Yowie. So there's all these different sort of region-specific cryptids.
The leprechaun, and also there's very strong rumors about there being dragons in China still. So I mean. Are they interacting from just different frequency bands? Like, are we just like seeing where these sort of portal energetic spots are, allowing this sort of us to see just that maybe just it there? We still don't really understand like how many layers of reality are on top of us, or around us, or we don't know. I could have dragons all around me right now. There could be Yowies right behind me. Like I just have to be on the right bandwidth spot energetically to tune into the frequency band of it. Like those soldiers who were flying the airplanes have given the glasses, right? The glasses, and could see all that crazy shit in the sky.
Well, all the reset stories from antiquity always tell of these creatures and cryptids and stuff appearing when there's resets. Like, is that because gates are opening and they're coming through, or is that because you raise your frequency and you can interact with them suddenly because they're always there, but suddenly you can see them?
Well, some people are saying that that's what's happening with CERN, that they're letting things in now, and that's why some things are being seen through these.
Yes, CERN, man. Fuck yeah.
What do you think it's CERN? Like, do you reckon it's real, or?
I think that they definitely have an occult division. So let's say
it's definitely occult.
Yeah.
I saw there's
definitely. I've heard that there is a high witch working alongside them. This is, if I was to say, anyway, there's a lot of these
it's
witches in the cabal, and they work alongside military / scientists. So and they don't even know it, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a continuation, isn't it, from what's his name? Not Bacon. What was the other one? Queen Victoria's side man.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about, the James Bond guy.
Yeah, James Bond. Yeah, and that went sort of through to Aleister
John
Crowley.
D. John, is it
John
John
D.
D?
John
Yeah,
D. John D.
yeah, and they went through to Aleister Crowley, who was communicating with that. You know, we've all seen that sort of grey alien face.
Yeah.
What was it called? I had a funny name.
AWAS. Was it
And
AWAS?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was something
I think that was
funny.
an
Now
Archon
through to
personally.
CERN, right? They're doing the same thing. They're still trying to connect with these, with what, a different realm, a different,
Different realm.
reality.
So here's the thing I'm playing with, looking at some synchromysticism and stuff like that, and how they're utilizing the reason why they do mind control is I believe that they're as you create these altars for the person who's being mind controlled, they then become this vessel for these archons or these entities that are like gods to work through them. So that's where the rituals come in, and that's why a lot of the musicians are representing different deities. So they do these rituals, these modern rituals, with these mind-controlled entertainment people. So let's say, do you remember when Miley Cyrus kept sticking her tongue out? And people were saying that was Kali. And then, so there's these sorts of things happening, and that's what's happening. That's why I got to do this video about Jeff Buckley, because the whole story of how Jeff Buckley died and what he represented and all these things, this is all to do with ritual around deities and summoning gods and goddesses and whatever into this realm to initiate certain things. Because the way he died and who they teamed him up with, this is where that false twin flame thing's happening. They're getting people together as twin flames and they're tying them together, and they're kind of doing these rituals with them in order to elicit a certain reaction in this realm and manifest certain things. And so they kind of got him together with Elizabeth Fraser, where there's so much stuff around her where every time she sings a song with the Cocteau Twins or whatever, there's some kind of weird siren deity that keeps coming through her. And of course he died in a drowning, and she sang Song to the Siren, and there's all this stuff that's connected, and there is very strong evidence that she was part of a massive MK Ultra thing in Scotland, and she lived on the same street as one of the scientists who was experimenting with mind control, sort of torturing and mind control and all of that stuff. And, you know, if you know anything about her music, Elizabeth Fraser, she's just channeling something. It's coming through her. It's this very weird ethereal voice. And yeah.
You could definitely make the case that the music and film industries and everyone involved in them, the singers and the actors, are actually the high priests and priestesses fulfilling the ritual process. I mean, that is the theatre. That they are doing it. That's what they do with their songs and their movies and their.
That's what they keep.
You know, I saw Dolly Parton the other day, and she had the whole one-eye thing, and I was like, oh yeah, even Dolly.
Yeah,
but like ultimately, it's every single. That is the role of the musician, the superstar, the stars are the high priestesses and priests, the theatre,
activators of the realm,
of the ritual. But how about this? Like, if they're the ones presenting the ritual for everyone to see without knowing, so they're basically presenting the subliminal rituals all over us all the time. We have to remember that the essence of the archons is they're master delusionists. You know, they're master delusionists, the inverted version, meaning, you know, when it comes to something like the topic of CERN, like we must remember with these great big things and the AI takeover and everything's happening, that they're actually masters of they are masters of presenting a picture, presenting an image, presenting a visual theatre structure for us. So, you know, for all we know, CERN, like the moon landing or NASA, is just presenting an amazing theatre production for us, and they make a big deal over the openings and ceremonies and all that shit that goes into with that. that is actually a cardboard set. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's
Okay.
not an actual reality. It's not an actual fucking technology they have. It's a set.
No.
It's a set.
Yeah, but the rituals are real, but yeah, the tech
But the
isn't.
rituals are real. Yes.
Yeah.
The
So
rituals
it's
are
like
very real.
have you heard that the Nephilim are clowns, JC?
Oh, yeah. Where did I hear that
I was
from?
telling you about that.
The
I was
Nephilims
telling
are
you about it.
You were telling me
With the
about
gin.
Yeah.
With the gin.
Yeah. So there's all these sort of pictures back, and there's a couple of
Oh, he cut
It's
out.
frozen again. You're frozen. But yeah, that was the series I was telling you about. The Nephilim are clowns.
back.
Are you back? Go.
The Nephilim. Yes. So basically, the story goes that they were the first clowns were put into for rituals, right? Because the Nephilim are the jinn, the archons, and that. And so it was all to do with ritual, and that's where the circuses came from. They were created so they could do rituals in the three rings, right? In the three ring circus, and then that turned into pantomime, and which turned into theatre, and then that turned into the movies.
Right.
So we're still going through this whole. So it's all just ritual playing out on.
Yeah, and that makes
what it was all
sense
created
with
from.
the twin flame concept. So there's this alien love bite concept that there is this kind of otherworldly interference in these twins, and so there is this idea. I'll have to look it up again, but they're trying to bind these two people together that are. There must be something like a priest class thing or some kind of bloodline thing that these people aren't aware of. They're binding them together, and then the archons are using the womb of. So they're trying to trauma bond these two twin flames, and then they use the womb of the female to birth these Nephilim type beings, okay, into our reality. And that's what they're doing. And there's almost like this forced, like they're orchestrating the meeting of two people. And then there's this very weird phenomena that Eve Lorcan documented about the alien love bite and how it's always the same playbook. It's crazy. Exact same playbook with every single meeting of these twin flame things.
Playbook.
It's a playbook.
Playbook.
Yeah. But what they want is the womb of the female. And so they may be true twin souls, so like a soul that's been split in two, but these archons are taking over in another, they're kind of manipulating. Like, for example, I started my channel, I pretty much think it was archons that made me do it because I was, I'm meditating and this thing appears in my meditation and says, you need to start a channel, blah, 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 and put these up. And it's like it was all orchestrated, everything, the meeting, everything was orchestrated, everything. He started a channel 2 weeks before me. They did it all to sort of manipulate. And then what happened? I met him, and then for the last 9 months, my weight has soared up as though I'm pregnant. It's like this weird etheric thing. They're using the womb, they're using the womb energetically of the females, the real twin flames, and they're doing these things where they're breaking them up and they're causing trauma. So they're feeding off us as they're causing these destructive relationships or these harrowing events. It's crazy. But anyway, that's all part of how they're manipulating us to birth these Nephilim type entities into this reality.
So is it like, are you talking about this being like a metaphoric birth or an actual physical
I'm not
birthing
sure.
of a baby?
I was listening to someone talking about this, and if you talk to abductees or whatever, there is a dimension where they're saying, I can remember being forcibly impregnated and I'm birthing, and there's these versions of me out there. They're birthing me.
Yeah.
They're playing with us. So there is these other realms where we don't know, but we're being used and they're taking our genetic material. There's also a guy who's like a demonologist who I'd love to talk to, and he's saying that there was a belief that so a lot of these witches that were said to have sex with the devil, what they were doing was what they would do is they would shapeshift into, say, the woman's husband, and she thinks she's having sex with her husband, and then right at the moment of conception, they would
Yes.
shapeshift out
Stay
into their
Yep.
face and look into the woman, and it was that genetic material that was being
Oh,
birthed,
yeah,
right?
that's been, I've heard of that, yeah.
And so they
Yeah,
want
well,
to replicate themselves in our realm through us.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, Mind Unveiled just put out a video. It's like 9.5 hours, but it's all on homunculus.
Who was
And
that?
he's Mind Unveiled. I'm
Mhm.
only about an hour into it, but he's linking it all to alchemy and how they were creating life basically with these different things. And I can't recall exactly because I was listening to it in the background, but he was talking about the same kind of thing about them using women and somehow energetically impregnating them, and that would create this other being. So that's very interesting. So some side notes watching
So,
for everyone
and
who's watching.
I mean, according to Janice Barcelo, that every time
Yeah.
you masturbate, you're creating life in another realm, and it's this life that
Oh,
has
whoa.
it's just floating there, and it's like because it's creation force. We're creators,
Well, that's
right?
fucking crazy,
I
man.
mean,
So like
That's a
every
crazy
time
idea.
a man
Hello.
well, you
busts a
could tie
nut.
that back to porn, couldn't you? Like they're
Yeah, look at
pushing
the
porn.
porn.
Well, that's what porn
Yep.
is. Porn
Yeah.
creates a portal in your room. So like wherever you're masturbating, you're watching porn, it creates a dark portal for these things to enter. And that's what they're doing. They're
And
embedding, they do witchcraft on each porn production, like not necessarily each set, but
Yeah,
they do it on
like the music records. Yeah, that they
and
do.
then they're
Yes.
creating a portal through our screens in our rooms and whatever. So you can always, there's always some attachment to people. Honestly, when they watch porn, you can set there's attachments. Okay. And that's why.
can I add to that?
Cut it out. Yeah.
I'll add to that conversation, which is one of the courses I've done recently with MJB. Mitch mentioned that there's now scientific evidence that's come forward. Not that that means much to us, but anyway, that's come forward that actually can prove that the more a man wanks off to porn, the gayer he gets, because he's self-serving himself. He's coming, he's having an orgasm with his own male hands, right? With his maleness.
That's
He's
where
and the more he does it, the more feminine he becomes, the gayer he becomes. And then there's nothing about women in there. I asked, well, what about the women? And there was no evidence. Obviously they don't think women use porn.
Yeah, just like
that's like
times,
like in the monastery. One of my
not
issues.
real sex. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the women in the Buddhist monasteries
anyway,
don't get
come on.
sex education. They don't get any education about dealing with any sexual desires or energy. But once they've become celibate and ordained, but the male monks get shitloads of special training about how to deal with their sexual urges. But same with this study, it focused in on. So basically, the more you basically masturbate to pornography, the gayer you create the male population.
That
And
makes
sense. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because really, I know some men who masturbate a lot. Well, I used to know. And that whole idea but it's also the perversion as well of all of it. Okay. Because the deeper you go into porn, the more perverse it gets. And the more you need to get off on, and it's just the normal stuff doesn't get you off anymore. So you have to keep going and deeper, and it starts to become more perverse. But watching their own hand, do it, then what's the difference if it's some other guy's hand, And
it triggers some chemical. There's actually a chemical change in the brain's that it changes the brain's chemical balance. That's what they were pointing at more than anything in the study, that the chemical balance changes and actually produces more estrogen. And that's where the femininity comes through. And now we've got a massive issue with pornography and a massive issue with femininity in the masculine.
Yeah.
And soy's full of estrogen as well.
Soy boys. All the soy boys, stop eating soy. Start eating meat. I mean,
so
we can go on and on and on about gender and stuff. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in this concept of how much of what we see the archons present us have any basis past a cardboard set, and I was just thinking as we were talking about that, Like the nuclear bomb. It's a very good example. Like they've presented all of the, theater evidence and sets of this like bomb that can take out the world. But like there's no actual evidence of it in its actual reality, like created and physically. We've never seen one, but they've never released one. Like it's all been theater as far as us knowing. Same with NASA, same with space, same with disasters like tsunamis and droughts and fires. They're basically constructed. Like they're not a natural production that the energy of the earth naturally for it. Like in our understanding, it's been a very big giant like theater special effect, when they actually manipulate the weather and create. It's a special effect that they've used weather modifications around Australia to generate.
This is. I often wonder, do they have anything? Like really? I mean, we know they got some tech, but do they have any of these mass?
Oh, he's frozen again. Okay. Like the robots, the robots.
Somebody I heard
the AI stuff.
I think I heard Chris Knowles talk about this in an interview. Who's a synchromistic?
You're frozen, Campbell.
Come on, Elon.
That's how I can just yell.
Come on, Elon.
You're frozen, Campbell.
There's a Starlink.
He's still frozen. There.
Starlink, man. I'm coming to you from a red
Campbell, speaking of technology, I was saying that I was listening to Chris Knowles, who he's the synchromistic guy who sort of connects all these dots of all these different things. And he was saying that, this idea of us going faster and faster into this future with all this technology and robots and blah, 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 blah. I think they're at the end of their tether. He said, because really, when you think about it, I mean, and I've said the same thing, is when you think about it, what's the technology that's been achieved recently is the mobile phone.
Yeah.
But really, it's been around for like 25 years, if not more.
Right?
More than that, right? And the only difference is it changed shape, it's faster, blah, blah, blah. But the way he said, they don't have anything up their sleeve is because when someone like Mark Zuckerberg announces something with his Meta thing 30 years from now, like he's going, in 30 years we'll be doing this, then they don't have the technology. They don't have it.
And yes.
Otherwise they're doing it. Yeah.
They'd be doing it now.
Yeah, I agree. It's all just fear porn. Like we know nuclear, right? Like, we've got Chernobyl, we've got Fukushima, we've got Nagasaki. Like, there's no radiation poisoning in any of these places. So, and that's why they always say, oh no, it was an atomic bomb in Japan.
So what happened with all the cancer cases in Japan?
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, what I'm saying is, isn't there a lot of? Was there no cancer?
No, there's no. There's was.
Has it increased beyond what would be normal for cancer
it would have
in Japan?
Increased because it increased everywhere, but the average age, that they live, is pretty much the same. So there's no evidence of a lot of people dying.
I don't believe
No, Fukushima wasn't. No. Well, Lorenzo says that they still sell all the food, but the stuff from Fukushima is just cheaper because a lot of people still think that it's bad, but they're selling it in all the shops.
Right.
So, look, we don't even know really. The whole concept of radiation is another special effect. Like, if I look at it from this perspective, like it's very possibly another special effect. How many people have died from COVID? Or is that a special effect of the flu? There's just special effects everywhere. And what's interesting? We've just started listening to a book called Stolen Focus. And it's basically one man, he was a journalist. It's a fantastic book. I really highly recommend everyone checking it out. We've been listening to the podcast, the audiobook. So basically the premise is that he has realized how much technology and socials and all the stuff that he was wired and fired to has affected his brain. So he went on this mission for the last couple of years to interview everyone who had done studies on the impact of having this technology around us 24/7, like our mobile phones and the Twitters and the blah, 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 blah. And it's an amazing book. It's fully disturbing. And by the end of it, I'm pretty sure this whole audience will want to be off the devices as much as possible. But the point that I want to bring forward is that he said that basically the motto of Google is if you're not fast, you're fucked. As in, everyone has to be faster, faster, faster. And if you're not producing a faster, better version of this, then you're fucked. But he also said that through these studies, they've understood that genius creation can't come from that level of speed. You cannot take on board the depth and the creative, empathetic ingenuity of any new creation or new idea or new innovation or new anything at the level of speed that this technology has taken the human brain, where you're literally on average flicking through something every couple of seconds. So your attention span to read a book has been reduced to wanting to have key headlines and that's it. The depth is gone. The quicker the technology grows, the less able we are to create and be in any state of innovation. Therefore, it's an oxymoronic thing.
Yeah.
To get faster with the tech, they don't even have the capacity to dream it up.
No.
My
And
sister
speed
and I
reading,
were
we're taught
talking
that,
about
people
that.
can speed read are so clever.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We're taught like speed readers are good, but they did all these tests and they realised they've just got no comprehension. Yeah, they don't know what they're reading. Like, you can't quiz them on it. Like, they just think they're blah, 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 but it
My
doesn't
sister
mean
and I were
anything.
talking about that this morning and how this impact of everything has on education. We were comparing ourselves. My sister and I have very high IQs, and my brother, and we basically are self-taught. And our generation, I mean, she was talking about her son and she was saying he doesn't know what to do. And she said, how did we sort of teach ourselves things? We just had this curiosity and we would, it's not the level, you can't have the level of depth of education that we had when we were younger, where we just dove into everything. If we had the same kind of fast stuff coming at us that we did when we were young, we would not have comprehended and had that critical thinking and had the creative sort of exploratory sort of thinking that is required of an intelligent person. That if we had today what we had back when I was young, we wouldn't have the same intelligence, is what I'm trying to say. Is you can be book smart.
Agreed.
Most of the people I know that went to university and studied, let's say they studied pharmacy or whatever they studied, they're smart in that thing, but they don't know anything else, right? Whereas
but not wise.
They didn't have that full range of capacity of learning and really delving deep into study and exploring and research, even basic research. People don't know how to research. And I'm not talking about typing something in Google, because most people don't even know how to type keywords in Google to look up stuff. Honestly, the amount of questions I've had of how do I find blah, blah, blah in my country? Put the keyword and your country. Like, people don't even know how to do that. But actual research, people don't know how to do. And here we go to Jason Brashears. 26 years behind bars, has the time to sit and read and dissect and look at and because he's got all the time in the world, right?
Yeah,
and look and investigate and remember and piece together and when you don't have that attention, when you don't have the attention, you can't do that.
We were probably the last generation who had libraries, and you had to get taught how to research and go through all the card drawers and find it. I mean, it was a big process, wasn't it, to find your book?
Well, my sister's a librarian.
Now it's just Google.
Massive changes, in the technology. So, even encyclopedia.
We're listening to.
Old encyclopedia.
That's the other thing. Like, he's looking for old encyclopedias because people are just giving them away. They don't want them anymore.
I love them.
They're not worth anything. But back in the 80s, like, that was a job, man. They'd be door knocking trying to sell you encyclopedias. It was a massive investment.
Yeah.
And now that they're not worthy because everyone's got it on, they reckon they got Google. But the problem with that is, they can turn it off, right? You can lose all that, all this info.
I mean, I get geez, his like internet's doing well in that corner. It's because you're near the toilet, Campbell. We've got to move you. Your internet keeps stopping. I mean, I guess like it's interesting because even though when I look at the old encyclopedias that we used, I still cringe now at the information that's inside those encyclopedias. Like, they're still full of bullshit. But I think the point of difference is that our ability to comprehend, to think through, to focus in for hours at an end, to complete our projects, to do that, and keeping our mind on it has dramatically diminished to a set of scrolling and wanting just the headlines and just like, so it's the depth. And, you know, and isn't it interesting that when we look at like the truth seeking community, like, I mean, when we go do our Tartaria events, like the community in the audience, they're our age group and older. You know, it is the great thinkers now of that movement are from the ilk before technology.
So this takes us to the thing that we said about how they took the Indigenous people and they took the knowledge from the past and they eliminated. This is another way of eliminating knowledge, right?
Yeah.
By rewriting the history through a transitory means online, okay, where Google can edit and change information and swap that out. So they have to do it on all fronts. I know even in Lebanon, for example, with colonization from the French, my mum's generation were sent to school and they learned French and they spoke French at school, and her parents spoke Arabic. And so it's like there's this, that's how colonizing works, is eliminate the language, eliminate that. But how do you do it with Westerners? How do you eliminate the language with Westerners and knowledge? You edit what they're watching, you speed up the amount that's available to them, you put a lot of false information out there, you make sure, because you know how people work on headlines. The amount of times I've seen people make comments in my bloody videos and they read the headline and that's it, and then they make a comment and has nothing to do with the video, or they have a question that is answered in the video, shows me that most people don't watch or look and listen and observe and really, really comprehend. Comprehension is the biggest thing that is missing with most people. And it's happening, it's becoming worse and worse and worse. Comprehension, you know, is just not there with most people.
Perfect for a takeover. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's why homeschooling is the key. Home education or unschooling. What was that? Home education and unschooling is the key, because you do it at the pace of the child and at the key interests of the child, and they can explore whatever they want in the time that they want. And you can go deep, you can go as fast as they need to go, you can go higher or lower or whatever, and they will learn a lot better that way. They'll get a more integrated sort of education.
Building, man. They took away building blocks. The kids still have building. Building is like, as we've been finding out, is way so many skills, right?
The dexterity.
Like,
the dexterity. Dexterity is not there, so they're eliminating handwriting,
problem solving.
When I was my daughter's age, I had already practiced my signature in running writing. She can barely write. She can barely write and form letters in a sentence.
Well,
there's chickens in the house.
Keyboards, right?
Can I have
chickens
a
in
toilet
the
break?
house.
Can I have a toilet break?
Yes. I'm going to make another coffee. Let's do that.
Thing. Okay.
Right. Cool.
The gin cleansing pills, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the
Not
parasites, that's another level. Parasites living in the physical body with the parasite. This is what Laura Whitworth tells once she does the entity release, is advises people, especially if they've had a sacral demon or a sacral entity, she advises them to do a parasite cleanse, and it will usually help the physical processes along with the. Well, guys, do you know that I'm going to do SCHH, the soul center healing hypnosis, but I'm not allowed to do it. I'm not allowed to charge for it until I do at least 25. So I'd like to offer. Yeah, I'd like to offer you guys if you want to.
Is it regression?
Yeah, I'll do it as much as for sure. No, I'm going to do it on just my friends and family.
Yeah.
And just
I heard of. Ellis, and yeah,
Keep doing it until I could practice. That's why I want to
I
build
got
the
a few
studio
questions.
that's why I want to build the studio so that I could start doing it properly and have that space for myself. Yeah. And then that way, and I'll
Nice.
You
even
can
get
do mine and use it if
soundproofing.
you
I want to
want.
get soundproofing on the walls. Yeah.
You could do a sesh with me if you wanted and to use it. You could use it. You could,
Yeah.
I don't know, you could showcase it, use it, whatever.
Now,
Put it out there.
Toilet
it's
talk.
pretty
Toilet talk
fascinating.
with JC.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
get to the bottom of this toilet issue. Before the chicken got in the house just then, what were we talking about? Let's just go from there and finish it off. Shall we round off the show? What were we talking about?
I don't remember. Multiple
Ah,
timelines,
shit.
parasites,
Entities, timelines,
entities.
parasites.
Oh yes, birthing these entities, birthing
Was that where we
through
were?
the
And
womb of the
through the
yeah.
women. Yeah.
Well, you want to hear something very fascinating. I in my session with Laura Whitworth, so I've had she was the fourth entity release that I had, and she did a very thorough job being the woman who created the whole thing. And one of the things that came through from the entities that spoke that she was removing, which one of them was an archon, by the way, hooked into my liver. And there was a lot of information that came through about the archons and how they operate. But the thing that these entities kept saying is that I was a portal opener. So here's the thing, and they kept saying that I activate people. There's something about my soul signature or frequency or whatever, and that where I come from. So I'm not a human soul. Like many of us who do this work, they call them light workers. We're actually not from this realm, so we come in and help the humans. So here's my concept, okay, based on what they're talking about. And this will sort of go into the whole idea of them using the wombs. What if this realm, you know how we use the term NPC? What if the vast majority of the inhabitants on this earth are these human, robotic flesh suits, right? And we, as those from outside of this realm, with the light of source. So this realm is currently taken over by an AI-controlled archonic race, right? And there's all these beings that they created that they play around with. And then we came in and we inject light and life force into the NPCs, and they then reflect back the light, almost like a pilot light. We ignite the pilot light in them, and that activates them into organic consciousness. And in doing so, it awakens them. And this is why we have targeted individuals such as these archons, which they confessed to me that they've been targeting me since the beginning of time. They said, you keep coming into our game. This is our game, our rules, not yours, right? So, and so those of us who are not from the human realm, the matrix realm, we're actually not part of the whole soul trap thing. We're coming in and out willingly. And that's why one of my past lives, I was on a spaceship in between lives. I was like, I died in one of my past lives in this hypnosis, and I end up in this spaceship. And the whole message was, we go in, we help the humans, and we come out. So if that's the concept and that's the premise, then what if it's us that's putting these codes in or these things in? I've talked about this before. These remnants of our other realms, we're putting them in each time we come in here because we know that amnesia is going to happen, right? And then it's like a key, it's like a marker for us to remember.
For us.
And we're dissecting and working backwards. So we're constantly up against these archons that are they're time manipulators, they're trickster beings, they're doing everything. They got all the cards, right? They've got all the rules, the cards, everything. And they're changing the rules of the game all the time. They're changing the timelines. But there's always this key things that we unlock, it's like us trying to remember the things that we've
put
put
like the Matrix.
Yeah.
when they go in that building and he sees the cat, and for them, like, deja vu is a marker that something's happening. Yeah, right. So like the buildings and things or whatever, right? But we just notice them, and like that's our marker that something else is going on here, and we're here to do a job. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of
It's
people
like
wake up around Tartaria.
it's like the Labyrinth movie, or any movie with a maze in, or any fantasy movie where the player has to basically work their way backwards through the maze, where the walls are changing and the
Reverse
the game's reversing all the time and changing all the time. Yep.
It's like we're reverse engineering everything, right? To undo it, and we're bringing it back into the balance of organic. So it's like we're undoing the matrix by we're injecting organic consciousness into the NPCs, and with each generation they keep trying to wipe the information, right? So this is why they're doing the things with Indigenous people. Why are the Indigenous people of all the cultures targeted? Because they are the key holders of these ancient information that doesn't, because if we take the monarch, the MK Ultra monarch programming, what they believe is that generationally we hold these memories, right? So that's based on the premise of the monarch butterflies, that even 8 generations, 100 generations down the track, the monarch butterflies always know where to go to for the place where they fly to migrate or whatever, where they breed, etc. So they have that memory in them, and it's bred into them. This would explain why they, as the controllers, the cabal, etc., breed and interbreed to keep the memories alive of whatever they do, and also the mind control, torture, etc., because that kind of control and that kind of psychopathy that they are breeding into each other and remembering, it becomes like a cell memory. Many say that a lot of them reincarnate within the same family again, because it's like the royals, etc., because they're it's like this holding on to this key, because they're susceptible to the mind wipe as well, right, when they get born again. So they have to hold on to that key and that piece of information all the way down the track, while the rest of us are having things wiped and we don't even remember. And then we see Berenstain Bears and Berenstain Bears, and then, and memories are short. People don't remember things, but others do. Eliminating hard copies of books would be another way of doing that. Rewriting history all the time is another way of doing that. But going back to that ignition, or that activator, these beings that come in here, that are able to come into these meat suits in this game and help out life to become like an organic consciousness and remember their God spark. So the activators and portal openers of these people, right?
And so we ignite inquiry of consciousness. We ignite some new evolution of consciousness, like say the Tartarian stuff that's just happened, and that then becomes part of the memory basis of that infuses itself into the DNA memory. Is that what you're saying? The NCPs.
Collective.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the NPCs.
Of the collective.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then but it also becomes part of the collective consciousness, if that makes sense.
Consciousness. Yes, exactly. Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Because I remember 3 years ago, you'd say, "Oh yeah, free energy," and you just get laughed, like literally, like 99.99% of people would just be like, "Oh, you're an idiot, it doesn't exist." Now, pretty much everyone I can, at least everyone I interact with, believes, it's true. Like, and that's all through Tartaria, right? And this whole remembering thing. So it's an interesting point of view. What do you think about the maps then? Do you think, because there's a problem with the maps, right? There's big problems with maps. Yeah. Could they be from another realm, timeline, or something brought in here?
Timeline, I think, or different from what I can recall. I mean, I'm only going based on some of the investigations I had in hypnosis, and I'm piecing together things, and even land holding memories. So like going Why did I
Yeah.
keep getting pulled to go to England? When I went there, all these things got activated in me, memories got activated in me, and past lives got activated in me. And when I was there, I was, talking to the trees in some region, and they said, welcome back, and these trees were saying, welcome back home. And some of them were making me remember a past life, and they said it was on a different timeline. And it was this realm of where King Arthur existed. So there's these stories that we believe are fairy tale or folklore, but there
Oh,
was
that's
a
very
timeline of
interesting.
existence of these realms, right? And in
Yeah,
that realm existed magic, where humans did do magic, where humans did do these things. But I also got shown that unicorns existed and dragons existed, and they were interacting with humans. And it was a slightly elevated frequency than what we have here. And this is where I believe the crystal cities come in, is they're on this different frequency. They're our ancestors, they're us possibly, in another frequency band. And it's not such a far stretch to think of that, because if we can only see a certain percentage and there's things outside of our spectrum, then therefore there must be other realms. And science is saying this now, that there's other things existing in our space. And it's it's almost like on top of one another in a different frequency band, right?
That's it's
So it
interesting
was
that
like it dropped
space,
down.
right?
So my theory is that there was a period of time during the Dark Ages, what they call the Dark Ages, where humans were in an elevated frequency, and the final influx of the archonic takeover, reptilian takeover, dropped the frequency enough, so they had put enough trauma into the system, into the grid, and taken over certain pinpoints and ley lines and stuff, and had injected enough lower frequency vibration into the matrix to drop the frequency down, so that the humans then started to manifest a realm that was lower in frequency. And so you end up with a realm that is a replica realm of the old realm, but lower in frequency, where certain things don't exist. And this is where the dolphins come in, Kelly, and the whales, because they're on a higher frequency, right? But they're still in our realm somehow. They're kind of there. I mean, what if extinct animals are in a higher frequency band and not in our realm anymore? The dodo and all these other things.
Is that what outer space is? Is that what all the aliens are, right? In outer space, like in our space, but out of our space,
out of our space. Extraterrestrial, in the other lands.
Yeah. So
the
it could be
outside.
Frequency.
This is why they're playing with the frequency. I mean, this is what it all comes back to. They're playing with the frequency, the Wi-Fi, these pulses that are happening. What was that earthquake that happened in Melbourne the other week? And I know many people in Melbourne tell me they felt this they felt off after that. And it was like a pulse of some kind. And, who knows what this is? I'm bringing up a lot of topics now.
Yeah. No, it's good.
I mean, it makes total sense to me.
Isn't it?
Totally sense. Like even yesterday, I was looking at I was just putting the post up for the Facebook page, and this Facebook clip came up where someone had an infrared camera or an infrared blue camera. No, I don't remember. Let me just check. But they were holding it up against someone with his iPhone in his hand, right? And he was just holding it. He wasn't on. It wasn't doing anything. Every 5 seconds, his phone was taking an infrared photo.
Wow.
It's the fucking trippiest thing. And I think, well, we'll put that on right now. We'll edit that into this so I can show you. I want to show it. Can you guys see my screen if I put a video on?
Yes. Yeah.
I want to show you. All right, let me show you.
Send it in the chat.
Oh, but you don't have Facebook though, do you?
I don't.
It's
but
on Facebook.
Campbell can play it now.
Did you get kicked out on Facebook yet?
Yeah, 2020. They
Oh,
She
have you
hasn't
been
been
back
on Facebook.
since then? Oh,
I haven't
nice.
had, but I've got a group, and then they banned me. They banned my group, and then there was like 27,000 people, and then they banned me. So I recreated the group, and then they banned me, and they banned my Instagram. So Campbell,
Crazy.
if you open that thing, you can play it.
Only because without the flashing, you can't really see. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you see that?
Yep, can't hear it though.
Can't hear it.
Ugh.
You have to click the little thing that says share audio.
Did you see that?
Yeah, yeah, can see that. Yeah. So when it covers the camera, it still does the flashing, doesn't it? It's taking pictures of your finger. Remove the finger. Wow. Okay.
So he's putting out a infrared pulse every 5 or
Yeah.
10 seconds.
It's an infrared picture of your face ID, is what it said.
So
It
what
was
is
doing.
it? What's the benefit of that?
Well, it's taking a photo of his face.
Yeah, it's taking a photo ID photo of your face every 5 seconds. Well, I mean, it would be part of their like whole information surveillance, gathering, censorship, all that shit. But the point is, what made me think about that is that, we're talking about like frequencies being manipulated and timelines being manipulated and like devices playing a role in that and like this electrical grid around us all the time. And there's the camera every 5 seconds flashing something at you and we don't even know what it is, right? Every 5 seconds. It's just like, when you see those like mind control programs where they're just flashing things in people's eyes every like really quick. Exactly. It looks like Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork
That,
Orange,
this
I was
thing,
going to say, yeah.
yeah, that we're looking at this thing and it's just like bang, ding, 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 every 5 seconds, every 5 seconds. The computer probably saying thump, 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 thump. So like it's like pulsating at us at all the time. Like like in the Dark Crystal where they've got the lens on the gelflings and they're sucking the energy out like constantly all the time. Like our devices are doing similar things, man. On that level, I just was interesting to see it in physical form. Hang on one second, you lovely people.
Chooks.
Hey, Dave, I'm just.
So the chooks running around in the background. How cute.
Yeah. She on a call meetings.
Sorry. So
Yeah, like that's just so weird. I mean, they love to create shows and movies, right? Are they taking photos of us to create something? Like, is that how they created this weird warped world by like photographing everyone in the world and then like projecting it as a reality?
I think they want to
thought-
recreate us, but their own versions.
fucking hell, wouldn't that be a trip?
Yeah, in their own image, right? Because they want to be God.
Yeah.
Holy shit! That photographs every 5 seconds actually are being sent to construct another like living realm of consciousness, and then an inverted consciousness. 5 seconds.
This is interesting because have you ever heard of Daryl Sims? Daryl Sims is called the alien hunter. Okay, now whether you believe him or not, he claims that there was a mass abduction that occurred in the US. He had several clients who gathered the data. They all were on the same ship. Okay, they all got abducted, different people. And he had implanted one of his, because he does hypnotherapy, he had implanted one of the people that was regularly abducted with a screen memory of something or some knowledge of something. And anyway, these people that had got abducted, I'm wrecking the story, but anyway, these people that had got abducted, each were taken aside by these entities, these head entities. So on the ships, there were the Greys, there were Sasquatch, there was Dogman, there was like a mantis being, there was all these different entities, and there was these head honchos, right? And the head honchos took these different abductees aside and asked them and interrogated them and said, they showed them a picture of the human body and they said, point to where the human soul is. So these
Ooh.
entities were asking, where is the soul?
That's very Dark City. They were hunting for the soul, right?
So they were
they're
hunting
looking
for
in
the soul because so if we take that story as true, these entities, I think, that he's describing, because he said he won't tell anyone what they look like because he's looking for someone that's seen the same things as he did. I think they're archons, because I think archons orchestrate the whole space bullshit that's out there, right? I just think that everything is them. They're replicating, they're pretending to be greys, they're shapeshifters, right? They're taking the DNA from the earth realm and creating mantis beings or giant dog men or whatever, these things, right? These ant people and whatever. So they're creating all these little beings that are their minions and then abducting people for whatever cause. But what if they're trying to create their own humans and their own world for the demiurge? Because the archons are just the minions of the demiurge, the false god, the god of the matrix.
God, and he needs false people to rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
But God, if you ain't got any people,
yeah, I don't know.
There's no one praying to you.
They want to capture the
There's
souls.
no one giving you, their love and energy if you put no people.
Yeah.
Well, very interesting. I mean, it's a very interesting concept that, like, we've been all this surveillance and all this, like, invasion of our private and this tech and all of this stuff is just to feed in to an alternative, like, creation of humanity on Earth
Synthetic
as a feed
creation.
into the next shadow. Yeah, like the next construct, the next shadow. Like, that's a trip. That's a trip just to think about that. Yeah, it's fucking crazy. And gosh, like, wow. I mean, I could just, like, it's just so, I mean, to really think about that, to really comprehend that deeply, like, that's a big thing, that every single movement we make and word we speak and interaction we have and every time we wipe our ass, like, it's feeding
back to the toilet.
To a better and better. And isn't that just a classic metaphor for what we're seeing, what we're being presented with the AI and the AI robots that are taking over, that the human consciousness is feeding into them from all realms, and they will eventually morph to be the human being. Like, that's what we're seeing, right? With this.
The AI is learning how to be from us. It's trying to learn how to be human.
Exactly. And so I think really the biggest fear people have right now out there is actually not so much about the deep state or the dark state or the agenda. It's actually to do with these, like, this AI expansion into the human realm at that level of robotics and consciousness. And it's really interesting when we're talking about the stage set and it being a theatre production and it's just a cardboard, like, that is all we've seen in these, like, walking around robots that are being is like a computer interface, and also images of Elon Musk with a robot woman or something, we're like, that's sort of our context. Although I did hear an interview with a miner from Gina Reinhardt here in Australia, and he was just this Aussie bloke. He was saying they actually had the walking dogs, the walking robotic dogs monitoring the dormitory area. But apart from that, we don't really see much of it. And it's interesting to how much of this AI agenda actually realized and actualized. And, are they surveying us at this level because they're creating an alternative version of us in another realm? Earth take 302.
And I'll leave you with this. Or they're creating the other world because they're about to annihilate this one.
Yep.
Dun, dun, dun. They have to put replicas of us on another planet.
Oh my God. So, like, is there any point in me, like, fucking building another toilet or finishing this shed or planting that tree over there? You know what I mean? Like,
there's always a plan. There's always a reason.
I think one of the things that one of the questions I'd like to ask when we're live on stage in Melbourne is, like, I would love to know everyone's updated version on what is God. like what they put, what is it that you have faith in now? Like where's your
Yeah.
faith going? What, I'd really like to hear, I'd like us all to talk about that very specific topic, and invite some of our other, crew
That's
around
what.
the world to come in.
Yeah, we need to start asking
Yeah.
everyone the questions and then get them to record a 2-minute clip of what their concept is. So if we can think of some questions to pose to some of the people we know, and then get them to record 2 minutes of themselves explaining it and send it.
Like what do you think are the most pertinent questions on the mind of our audiences? And
so what is their concept of this reality? Like what is their
what is reality now after all of this?
What is reality to you, and what is the concept of this reality?
Yep.
What is the meaning of life?
Like what is it you now plug your hope and faith into? Like what do you, when you say, oh my God, blah, 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 the universe is so beautiful today, or God delivered this today, or what is that to you now after going through all of this? Like what is God?
Yeah.
What is the concept of God? What the
hell happened? Where are we, man?
What is the nature of our reality? What do you believe is the nature of our reality?
Yeah. Because so often we end up, this whole work we do is about deconstructing what we believe in. It's like deconstructing all the ideas that we've been programmed. And so we're at that point now where I'm really interested to hear from people, like, what is left? What do you believe in now? Like, let's clean that up, so you start to build that container around yourself again, because knowing what you believe in is strength. That's sovereignty and power in that. And we've really spent a good deal of time stripping ourselves back, and it's left me a cynical bastard. It has, on some level.
It's hard,
I'm always
it's hard, this existential crisis always occurs, doesn't it? But it's almost but it comes to the point of annihilism, and that's not what you want, right? So you don't want to annihilate everything in existence,
So it's the same questions, right? What are we? Where are we? How did we get here? What the hell's going on?
Half our, we all stand here today, and we are all sort of like simultaneously and paradoxically standing in a moment where we're like, this is a simulation. This is a simulation, and this is an organic template. Like, this is a contradictory, oxymoronic paradox. Like we sit in an organic simulation. What the fuck is that?
This is what I've been talking about for years, like the overlay, right? It's like we're sitting in the bush, right? But we're watching a movie. Yeah. And people are behind us convincing us that what we're watching is reality, while we're actually sitting in reality, right? But we're so focused. And that goes back to that book that we're listening to, where we don't have time to wonder and process. So we don't ever stop and look around and go, smell the rose and go, oh, there's a rose, or there's a tree. Oh, wow, I'm actually in nature. We're like, oh, what's the next thing? Have I got enough likes? Have I got enough likes? What's the headline? Blah, 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 blah.
That's why I tell people switch off. Switch off and make your own reality and live in the now, But is that about complacency, though? Here's the other thing a lot of people are floating out there, is, for example, the New Age concept, or these old religion concepts of old spirituality, of just live in the now. Is that all about complacency? Is that to keep us numb and don't ask questions, like that Operation Trust? With the whole care thing, is it the same thing? Yeah. Trust the plan, sit back and.
To me, it is, but I mean, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't sit in meditation and that. But I mean, it's up to it comes back to the same. If anyone's telling you what to do and you're doing it, well, I mean, you're a slave. You're not living, right? So I think there's a part of that, but there's a lot of people who say, well, there's light workers, or the light workers. No, you just need to shine your light. That's it. You don't have to do anything. You just got to be there. Yeah. And I think, well, I can't reference anything that's been done that's good, that where someone just sat on their couch, didn't do anything, and the world around them changed. Yeah. Like, I never heard of it. So I think we've got to
maybe act locally, think globally, right? So whatever.
Yeah.
As soon as I love that we use the word act.
Act on this,
act,
on what?
act,
Act. Yeah,
act.
yeah, right. Act.
Because
We're in a
this is a
play.
big fucking
We're in a
theatre
play.
play.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
And I
I
said
don't know. This is where
Globe Theatre.
I think as long as we listen to ourselves
Globe
and like
Theatre.
we follow our own path, then I think we're fine. I think this is why there's so much distraction. I mean, you look what's happened, because we're always saying, look how many people woke up in the last 3 years. But at the same time, look how much extra information we got. Like literally, it's like quadrupled. We're just getting hammered with headlines. And at the same time, it's the information is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Right now, we've got TikTok and we've got all these 1 minute, YouTube videos. Everything's going to 1 minute. So it's just bang, 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 bang. But there's no comprehension in that. There's no thinking. It's being told, right? So if people are following that, which they are.
It's feeding the organic creator machine. And as we feed that in, we then manifest the reality the way whoever is controlling that wants us to create, manifest with those quick sound bites, manifest. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Did I get cut out?
And I just had the image of Monty Python. I just had the image of Monty Python.
You need a pipe?
Me?
Sorry.
I need a pipe so that when I get cut off, I can just sit here smoking like a wizard.
You went
it can be arranged.
You went still for that whole time.
I mean, I have this image of Monty Python in my head where they've just got a meat grinder and they're feeding in this meat into someone's big giant mouth, and it's just like it just is feeding in whatever that is. It's wow. I mean, it's a trip to think that they're surveying us so severely because they're basically creating a 3D printed or a model of us for an alternative reality earthen version of us, but at the same time, like that 3D version is being fed basically pre-made chicken or fish food full of information that it like presents us in a certain way in that new realm.
Yeah, so
that stressed out, freaked out, fucked up, confused person in the other realm. So I mean, so many questions. But look, to wrap this little montage up, I just want to say to the audience that this did not start as a podcast. We're just actually sitting down to our team meeting about the live event that's coming up in Melbourne on the 8th of July and how we were going to structure and set up the show so that we pull out the most amazing new information and consciousness for our beloved Melbourne crew who were obviously symbolic of the beginning of all of this. So we just sat down here to talk that through. But what happened, of course, is you just played witness to why it's so difficult for us to get shit done because off we go on our fucking tangent for 2 hours.
We start riffing. What if? Hey, that's a t-shirt, Kelly. That's a t-shirt.
What if? So I guess we were going to sit down here and figure out how we could do a cool promo for the show and get everyone excited and get these get sold out and make it all happen. But in actual fact, here it is, the most organic raw version. I'm still in my work clothes. Campbell's down the laneway over there, and JC's we've just been sitting here to have a real casual dialogue, and this is it. So guys, if the tone of this show appeals to you and where we can take this concept and information, then this is basically what the show is going to be about.
Yep. Come on down, and you don't have to live in Victoria to come. You can live anywhere. Come.
Yep.
If you're in Tassie, South Australia, Queensland,
Western Australia,
New South Wales,
there's a couple
Western
from
Australia.
WA coming over. Yeah, I know a couple
from New
driving down.
New Zealand, come. Yeah,
there might be special guests. Dale Holmes might be around the area. So come down. It's a year, right? It's a year from the first one. So it's if you didn't make the first one, it will be a totally different show. Every show is completely different, all tailored, and because we want to keep up with the info, right, and keep going along and be on that cutting edge. So if you've got questions, come down and meet your tribe. That's the biggest thing. That's what we get from everyone. The biggest thing is the people.
And hug us.
I mean, it's...
Come and hug us. We didn't hug.
Get selfie.
I mean, I really feel for this show in Melbourne. Like we're sort of done with the presenting Tartaria. I mean, I think everyone's very up to date with that now. Like, but I'm so fascinated to bring in some of the best minds on these topics from around the world and bring them in to answer these sort of pertinent questions that I know I have right now, where the last couple of years has left me, and what I know our audience is also responding to. And I think, like, actually having them participate and addressing this so we can have a really broad overview of many amazing masterful consciousness that are focused in on this topic. And I really feel like the show in itself will present so many great new questions and fantastic new answers as we start to, I mean, almost like we're starting to rebuild our consciousness now, you know, like we've really unwound it. But at some point, we got to start to construct it.
I was thinking before, it's almost like the army, right? They break you down so they can rebuild you up. Like we've sort of broken everything down, and now we need to rebuild ourselves in our own image, right? Yeah, getting very biblical, right? Like,
it's true.
The false image, the false God. Now let's rebuild the real one, in our own image.
Love that. Yeah, so love that. Yeah, no, that's cool. And it makes total sense, because at the end of the day, like when we call our audiences together, like when we call this consciousness together, when that audience sits together in that space, like what we're doing on an energetic level is extremely original, because it takes the minds of everyone in that audience and the speaking and the conversation that funnels through that actually is a unique imprint in this realm. It's not replicated anywhere else in the world. You could not replicate what we bring together consciously in these days of these events. And man, there's something about Melbourne being the epicenter of something very negative that it's so powerful. That's why I know this show will absolutely sell out. It is so powerful, specifically of anywhere in Australia right now, to actually explode, or at least add this extreme sublime consciousness to that part of the realm. I really feel that. Like, do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It's so special down there. I don't know. And it feels like we're coming home again, going down there, even though, Cambell and I are not from Melbourne, but it just feels like that's the place to be, the place where all the minds are, the place where all the people who are going to be the change makers reside there, and so this will spark their imaginations into change and to just expand.
Mordor.
Yeah.
Mordor. Where all the hobbits are trying to throw the ring in the fire. But yeah, guys, links below. Tickets are selling fast. I think we're half sold out. So about a month to go. Links below. So if at this point, the tickets normally start to really speed up. So if you don't want to miss out, definitely grab your tickets. And there's heaps of places if you're out of Victoria. There's heaps of places you can stay if you want to come in.
So easy.
Yeah,
Melbourne is so easy.
Yeah.
You can fly straight in. You can catch a bus from the airport to the city. There's 1 trillion rooms in the city, and then it's a tram straight to the venue. Like, it's really easy to navigate, unlike Lismore, unfortunately. Very easy to navigate. So, this is a very accessible show for everyone. But fucking hell, man, I just feel very powerfully that Melbourne needs this event to go ahead, very powerfully. Yes. There is something about it that balances the scales, that brings back the energy that we all represent to a very demised and darkened Victoria.
We're not the antidote, we're the anti-Dans.
But we've got to pump Melbourne full of.
Yep.
July the 8th? It's a Saturday, all day. Come down, meet your tribe, listen to us, asking questions, talking. There'll be special guests. It'll be amazing. It'll be a one-off. If you miss it, we won't be doing that show again ever. So come and join us and bring your friends and family.
Yep, absolutely. Tickets are on the website. There's a lot of different pricing options now. So, get into it, guys. And thanks for the podcast, you two. I was honestly
Thank you.
expecting to sit there and have a smoke and just
We got out of the
work
meeting.
out,
Well-
get out my notepad. A lot of people are asking, like, what do we do now? Like,
What do we do?
what do we
No, I agree.
do? Like, what is it we're meant to do now as the light bringers of the era?
I think that
What is it?
probably every single civilization came to this point that we're at right now. And that's one thing I've noticed in studying history recently. I've just been really I've been watching a lot of videos on history, and I'm just like, it's always the same. Like, there is no change. There's always a cataclysm. There's always some big thing. There's always some big horrible event that kills thousands of
Reset.
people. There's always,
Yeah,
and people
reset the
survive. They just keep surviving and surviving and
And
surviving. And I'm
there's
sure
always Christ.
I'm sure
There's always
all,
a Christ. There's always an Antichrist.
yeah.
It's the same story.
I'm sure everybody thought the same thing we're thinking, like they're the end of civilization. Everyone always had that thought that they were
Yeah.
the beginning and end, So I guess we just keep doing what we do.